you're having a dream. Look, he's having a dream. You can see his little, bridge? Hi friends, welcome back to the Cat Makes channel. I am Kat and this is Theo. He is having a nap, long may it last. And this is episode 2 of the weekly vlog. We're back. We made it through episode 1. The very first episode was last week. Go back and have a look if you would like to see what all of this is about. But basically, the weekly vlog is an opportunity for me to sit down and tell you about all of the projects that I've worked on this week, all in one place, in a way that they don't disappear as they do in Instagram stories. So projects I finished this week, little sneak peek of that over here, projects I'm working on, and new things that I've started. We are still very much testing out this format. It's only the second episode, but I have decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a month's worth of these videos. I'm going to do them once a week for a month, and then at the end, we can sort of reevaluate if we want to keep going, if you're still liking what's happening, if I'm still liking what's happening. Last week's episode took quite a long time to put together, and I'm hoping that it can get faster at it. But anyways, in the meantime, if you have feedback, things you'd like to see more of or less of, please let me know in the comments so that I know and I can try to work those things in. Also, along that same vein, thank you so much if you watched last week and left a comment or didn't leave a comment and just hung around to watch the video. Often sewing is a very solitary hobby, so it's nice to be able to bring people into this little space and sort of take you along for the journey. And also, if you're here now and you didn't watch that video, that's totally fine. Thank you so much for being here and following along. But anyways, that's enough of me rambling. Let's get into the projects. I have one finished object to show you this week and a bunch of works in progress. So the first thing I have to show you, my only finished object of the week, is my green lace weight scarf. It's my second ever weaving project. I talked a little bit about how I ended up with the loom in the last video and also about my first weaving project. If you're interested in that, hop back and have a look. But as you can see, this one is super, super lightweight. Like you can see my sewing machine right through there. And it's also super, super soft. The green yarn is 100% alpaca lace weight. And the brown yarn is a wool from my stash. Both of these have been around in my stash for absolutely ages. And I really am excited about how this turned out. I'll tell you the things I learned. And I am also, on the flip side, excited that I found a home for it. So, second ever weaving project, still very much learning. And basically the way that I like to learn is by introducing new challenges with each project. So the challenges that I decided to introduce for myself with this project, aside from not buying any more yarn, so I wanted to work with yarn that was in my stash, so there was a challenge finding a project that was in the box of yarn. I wanted to weave with a lace weight yarn, so a lighter weight yarn than I wove my first project with, which was a fingering weight. And I also wanted to introduce both warp and weft stripes to create kind of a plaid. Did both of those things very successfully, learned a lot. I really like the weight of this scarf. I think it's a really nice transitional. It doesn't get that cold in Auckland, so you really don't want like a big heavy, although I just wear them anyways because I'm cold all the time, so there's that. But anyways, I really enjoyed learning to weave with lace weight and how the tension is a little bit different and how things kind of behave differently, especially with the alpaca because it was quite slippery. But the other thing with the stripes, I wanted to do stripes. I said that I wanted to do stripes. What I should have done was planned out the stripes so that things were a little bit more symmetrical, and I'll post a picture here so that you can see the whole scarf. I went for random. I fully committed to random. I was like, I'm just going to change colors whenever I feel like changing colors and then change back, and it'll just be whatever it is, and it'll look intentionally random and distributed and all of that. And it just bothers me a little bit to look at. It's fine. Like, it's objectively fine. It's a lovely scarf. And also, you can't really tell when you're wearing it, right? Because it's all just, like, if I put it on, you can kind of sort of see, how distributed the stripes are, how they're quite different. But if I put this on, if I wrap it around not to disturb the sleeping child, you can't tell anything about that. It just looked like a lovely, warm, lightweight scarf. So in essence, I mean, it wasn't I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure. It was a learning experience, and I will definitely be counting out and planning my stripes for future projects now that I know that about myself. When I initially bought the yarn, I think it would have been like 10 years or so ago when I was in university, and I thought I would knit my sister a project with it. I don't remember what I thought I was going to knit her, but I remember buying this yarn and thinking, I'm going to make something for Lil with it. And I made the scarf and I thought, well, I'll offer it to Lil and see if she likes it. And she does. I sent her a picture and she's very excited about it. So I'm going to bring her the scarf in July when I go to visit, and it's found a new home, which I'm really excited about because it's not quite my colors. And that striping situation was a good learning experience for me, but I am excited to do something with more symmetrical stripes for myself. There is one other thing I wanted to mention with the scarf project. I got to try out a technique at the end that I wasn't necessarily anticipating that I do, but I just love how it added to the project. So once it was finished, I took it off the loom and I gave it a good bath. You want to wash your finished item and block it out because it helps to set the fibers in their new sort of position. And it helps them bloom into the spaces, and it really fills out a weaving project. And I've also found that I've only done 2 weaving projects, so I don't know if this is going to be a continuation, but with the 2 projects I've done so far, I've found that the texture has changed a lot. It's softened up a lot. They almost feel kind of papery when they come off the loom, and then once they're washed and dried, they feel a lot more sort of fluid and bouncy, and the texture it's really a remarkable improvement. It's very surprising. Anyways, I was anticipating that the alpaca yarn would sort of bloom really nicely to fill in the gaps, and it did a little bit, but it didn't do it quite as much as I wanted. The scarf wasn't quite as fluffy and gorgeous as I wanted it to be. So I just tried something that I saw somebody else write about in an article I think I found on Pinterest, which is brushing. So I took like a regular utility brush, firm bristled utility brush. Now I have one that is specifically for yarn projects. It's not the same one I use to clean my fingernails or the kitchen or whatever. But you take this brush and you just lightly brush along the surface of the project, and it sort of helps free some of the surface fibers, and it gives it this really beautiful halo, especially with alpaca because it's got quite a long staple leg. And it actually makes the fabric feel like texturally, it makes it feel thicker, which was fascinating. So I brushed both sides, and the resulting fabric that's created with this scarf is just so nice. It's just exactly what it needed to sort of fill it out, make it a little fluffier, and really let that alpaca shine. So I'm super excited to give that to Lillian when I go to visit them in July. And I'm also really excited to start my next weaving project. I have to figure out what challenges I'm going to set for myself for the next one. Maybe I'll do a symmetrical plaid next time. Maybe that'll be my next challenge, or like a balanced check or something like that. But I need to decide, and I also am going to try to do it with something that's in my stash because I'm not ready to buy new yarn for weaving yet. It's all a challenge. I am also, hopefully in the near future, going to be weaving some tea towels for our new kitchen. I've got some yarn that's going to be a perfect match for that. But I want to do those in a waffle weave, which I have no idea how to do yet, and I've only done plain weave. So I need to learn how to do a waffle weave so that I can make those tea towels as well. And that's my only finished project of the week, so now we're on to the works in progress. So first up on the WIP list is my Reborn Sweater by Unwind Knitwear, and I've got a little bit of the yoke going on there. You can see the conversion into the tan yarn, which I'm super, super excited about. Can't wait to keep knitting on that project. I'm knitting it in a yarn called Earth 16, which is a 16 micron merino yarn. The eagle-eyed among you may observe that this yoke is looking suspiciously almost identical, if not completely identical, in fact, to what it looked like last week. And that is because I have not actually done any additional knitting on it this week. But I have a very good reason for that, which I will tell you about. So the yarn, which was very generously gifted to me by Joy from the Yarn Queen to make this sweater, these are the 4 colors that I have chosen. And I really love all of them. This purple is the main color, and then I've got this little tan for the yoke and the lighter purple for accents. And this was going to be the other accent color, this gorgeous green. I love it so much. I think this is such a nice color, but it just doesn't quite work with the other colors. It stands out a little bit too much, and I want it to look different. So Joy is very generously sending me a dark brown and a very, very dark purple to replace this green. And I'm super excited about that, and it's on the way. She's already done it. But very unfortunately, the courier has not arrived with that very important parcel quite yet. So I'm waiting on those colors before I can continue making my yoke. So I'm hoping next week when the yarn is here and I've gone through a little bit more of the knitting so that you can see what it looks like in the yoke, I'll be able to sort of show you a little bit better why I've decided not to go with the green, which is lovely. It's just not quite right for this project. Next up, I've got a sewing project. This is a Colourblok T-shirt that I'm working on. You can see it is very much not finished yet. I have pressed up the hem of both the bottom there as well as the hem of the sleeves, and you can see if I just sort of shift this around a little bit, you can see that pin right in the middle of the shirt. That's where I'm going to cut the neckline down to. So I like to cut my necklines up high, try them on, and decide what the neckline is going to be like later. I'm making it on my Burnett B68, which is here behind me. This machine is an overlocker cover stitch combo machine, And I finished almost all of the overlock side of things. So after I've stitched in the neckband, I'll switch it over to cover stitch. And then using the same machine, which is super, super cool, I'll be able to finish the hems on both the bottom of the shirt and the sleeves. And I might do a little top stitching on the neckline. I'm not sure yet. And then it's getting a pocket. So I'm going to put a pocket. Here, I'll show you. So basically, not to disturb the sleeping child, basically on this side right here, we're going to put a pocket in. And on that pocket, I'm going to do a little bit of machine embroidery because I've been just a little bit obsessed with machine embroidery lately. And for that, I'm going to use this machine. With the embroidered pocket, I didn't have any specific idea of what I wanted to put on there other than that I wanted to do some kind of embroidery. And I find with myself, maybe, or in general, the default when we think about what to embroider is often flowers, and I really wanted to challenge myself to come up with something other than something floral to put on the pocket. I just wanted it to be some sort of little interesting design. So I have landed on a jellyfish, which I'm super excited about because you get these really fun, cool organic shapes with the jellyfish. There's going to be a couple different textures going in there. I'm going to try to do a little bit of applique with like the head part of the jellyfish, but it's not floral. And I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be really fun. I'm using Nina's new version 9 embroidery software to do the digitizing on this. It's the first time I've ever used the software, so I'm learning as I go. I haven't finished it yet. I've drawn my jellyfish, but I haven't actually gotten it in and digitized it, so it's not quite ready for embroidery. I'm hoping to work on that this afternoon, actually. I'm planning on finishing that shirt, which is very nearly finished, just have the hem left and the neckline. And then I'll work on the digitizing for the pocket, and then I'll be able to sew the pocket on afterwards. And that's important because there wouldn't be space for me to get in to embroider the pocket once it's attached to the shirt, so it gets embroidered first and then stitched on. I'm so excited about how it's coming together. Moving on to the next work in progress, I have my Constellation Quilt, which I have been working on for the better part of probably 2 months now, but I haven't told you about it because last week I didn't work on it at all. This week, because my yarn is still on the courier, I did have a little bit of a chance to work on my Constellation Quilt. If you've been around on Instagram following me for a little while, you'll know that this is my second Constellation Quilt. The first one I made in sort of 2019, 2020. It was a really good companion during lockdowns, something that I could just work on without really having to think about too much. And at the end, I ended up with a really wonderful quilt that I sleep under most nights, which is really amazing. It's a whole cloth quilt, which means the entire top surface of the quilt is one piece of fabric, and then it has its backing like normal, which is, in my case, I like to ice dye them so they look a little bit galaxy-ish. So the backing is another separate piece of fabric, and all of the embroidery is done by hand. It's such an enjoyable process. The Constellation Quilt is a pattern by Haptic Lab. I'll put their website in the description so you can go check them out. Also, they're having a 30% off sale at the moment. If you see this video like when it comes out, things are on sale. I wanted to tell you about my Constellation Quilt because I think I do them slightly differently to the way that most people do them. I don't stitch through all 3 layers. So in the instructions, she has you layer your backing fabric, your batting, and then your top to make your quilt sandwich, and then you embroider through all of those layers. But what ends up happening, especially with the labels, the names of the constellations, is on the back side, it looks quite messy, especially if you do a back stitch. So instead of doing that, I have layered together my top piece and my batting, but not the backing. The backing will come on later. And I'm doing all of the stars, all the constellations, all the little running stitches that connect the stars to each other, and the names of the constellations as well. And then I am basting in the sort of grid lines that go throughout the quilt. And once I'm finished with all of the stars and constellations and names, I will add the backing and then stitch the grid lines through all the layers. So only the grid lines will be visible on the back. It's important to stitch through the batting because you want the batting to be sort of attached to a piece of fabric for stability purposes so that it doesn't have too much room to move around in there. But doing it this way with the backing means that you don't end up with like the reverse letters stitched through on the back. And I really like the way that looks. I think it looks a lot neater. So I am not very far into this project. I'm not anticipating it's going to get finished in the next couple months, probably be summer because I'll ice dye my new backing fabric when it's warm again and probably finish it somewhere around Christmas. I had slowed down a little bit on it because, as you can see, Theo likes to hang out while I'm working on things. And he was really happy to be under the quilt for the first couple weeks, but he started chewing on the batting, which was very bad. So I had to put it away for a little while, but he seems to have changed his mind about that. I had a really good session with him last night where he was just hanging out under there and I was stitching above him. It creates this fun little cave for him, which I would love that if I were him. But he elected not to chew on it, and I really appreciated that. So hopefully we'll get some more progress in. before my yarn gets here. That is everything I've worked on this week, which means we have 2 sections left. We have the life update and the hot tip. So I'll do life update first. I got to go to an industry conference for work this week, which is really cool. It was on Wednesday, and I was a finalist in an awards category that they were announcing this year for the Young New Zealand Tech Marketer of the Year, which is a bit of a mouthful, but really exciting to even be considered as a finalist. But I won. I won the category, which was super exciting, and we don't often get recognized for our work in that way. So it was really fun and also just really amazing to gather with a group of people that are all kind of working on similar projects and doing similar things. Theo was home with John all day and I missed both of them. But it was really exciting to go out into the world and to be recognized for that. So that's my little life update. All right, we're on to the hot tip. And after this, I'm excited because I get to go and continue working on my sewing project. So the hot tip this week is actually an answer to a question from last week. So if you have questions, let me know and we'll talk about them maybe in next week's video. I mentioned that I have 67 projects currently on my to-do list. And the question is around how I keep track of that. So I thought I'd run you briefly through how my list works. I mentioned that I had a spreadsheet, which is kind of an oversimplification. So my hot tip, if you are thinking of ways that you would like to look at organizing your sewing projects, is a tool called Notion. Notion has an app and also a desktop version. It's kind of a project management software and also database, but that sounds scary. It's much cooler than project management software makes it sound. So what I have set up, I'll post something here so that you have a little bit of a visual. What I have is called a Notion database, and a database looks very much like a spreadsheet, except it's very filterable and color codable, and you can add sort of different categories and sorts and things like that. So I have my list of projects down the side, which gives me the title. I have a notes column. I have a column for how far done they are. So notes started, planning phase, in progress, done except, which is like done except the hem or done except the buttons or something like that. And then there's also a completed section, which actually boots it off the list because I've got a filter set up for to not show me the completed ones. So they're not gone, but they don't display because I don't need to look at the list for completed projects that are already finished. I get to tick them off. There's also the ability to sort by dates and to sort by priorities. And I've also got a list in that tells me whether or not I have all the supplies for a project, which is super handy because when I'm at the store and I have Notion on my phone, I can filter my list by everything I don't have supplies for, have a look and see if I'm waiting to finish something because I don't have the right thread or something like that. And then I can grab the thread while I'm out. And I don't have to worry about keeping a separate to-do list because it's all just there. The Notion conversation could easily turn into a whole video. Also, if you're curious about Notion, they have a really strong presence on YouTube, so you can look up videos and see how other people use it. There's loads of different ways to use it. But if you're curious, if you want me to do a whole video on how I use Notion for sewing projects, let me know and we can get into it in a little bit more depth. All right, I think that's everything, which means I get to go and finish my Colourblok T-shirt now. But if you'd like to keep up with what I'm working on throughout the week, I am Cat Makes on both Instagram and TikTok. And you can also subscribe on YouTube to get notifications when new videos are published, which is definitely going to be, at least for the first couple weeks, these weekly vlogs. And we might also get into some tutorial videos as well once I find my feet a little bit more. So if you have requests or feedback or comments or encouragement even, because who the heck knows, let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.